Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Spiritual Psychic TV and this show, Being Spiritual, with me, your host, Ashley Robinson. Wonderful to be back and wonderful to see you joining us on Facebook and YouTube this evening. I do hope you've had a good week and a good weekend as we approach Friday night, and hopefully looking forward to an interesting or even exciting adventure over the weekend. It'd be really great for you to engage with this show. It works a lot better with you in the same way that my mind and your mind will work better like a parachute. Keep them open. So open minds. Let's try and raise the energy this evening. Let's work in a nice uplifting way, and let's have a nice interactive show. Sorry, this is your opportunity to ask us questions, anything spiritual, anything psychic. What goes bump in the night? What is the meaning of the universe? I'm not saying I'll know all of the answers, but I'll certainly give you an answer. I'll give you an answer based on my honest and humble opinion, and my opinion influenced by my guides and inspirers. So you've got an opportunity. Ask Ash anything, and we'll be taking your questions live tonight. You can interact with us on Facebook just by commenting on the live stream. And while you're doing so, you can show us any of those emotions. Give us a thumbs up and love if you're having a good time. And if you're not, let us know and we'll make a difference there. On YouTube, make sure you've logged into your account. Make sure you've shared this stream with your friends, folks. Tag them in, let them know across your social media channels that you're watching a show about spiritualist philosophy tonight, and you can then participate in the live chat. I'll do a couple of hellos in a minute, so do let us know where you're watching the show from tonight. I welcome back all of our regular viewers, and I welcome especially all of our new viewers. If you're new to Spiritual Psychic TV or this show, a special warm welcome to you. Do let us know where you are watching the show from tonight, folks. It will be great to hear from you. There's no particular theme or solid theme that I was going to focus on tonight. The last show from Women of Spiritualist Church, we spoke quite a lot about spiritual and spiritualist development, particularly development circles. There were lots of questions there about learning and development. And over the last year, we've only ever had one other show about training, learning, development when Mr. Bill Hughes came and joined us on the show. So I thought we'd talk a little bit perhaps about training, about pushing yourself. And actually, the conversation that producer Richard and I were just having before we went live was all about spiritualism and asking questions. You know, for me, one of the reasons I love my religion and where my faith is special is I get to mix a little bit of religion and science. I look for evidence and I'm constantly able to ask questions. And I think it's ever so important to be able to challenge the status quo and to ask why. And in the same way that, you know, I've got my little boys, 7 and 4, Ethan and Noah. I call it like the spoilt toddler mentality, which is when you want something or you want the answer to something, my 4-year-old Noah will just keep saying why. And you give him another answer and why, and you'll build it down and down and down. And actually, you then get to a foundation level where hopefully he'll start to understand why it is I've said no, or why it is I've had to do something. And I think it's actually really important in spiritualism to do that. You keep breaking it down. Why, how, all of those questions really important. And it's how we bring our own spirituality, our own faith, what makes our faith, what gives us our underpinning principles of what it is that makes us spiritualist or spiritual. So I'll do a couple of hellos and welcomes now, and we'll see who's watching the show. So we've got lovely greetings there from Florida and Tish. Hi, Tish. Lovely to have you give us your greetings from Florida. Hope things are well for you over there. Anne McLaren from Grimsby. Hi, Anne. Welcome. Nancy Briggs watching from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, USA. Hiya, Nancy. Welcome. Karen White. Having a hard time, miss my loved ones so much, watching from Scotland. Well, welcome this evening, Karen. Sorry that you're having a bit of a hard time. And if it's okay, we can send you some absent spiritual healing this evening. Wendy Gawley, watching from County Durham. Hiya, Wendy. Might be having a bit of a slow connection today, folks. Good evening from my dad and no doubt my mum. They're away on a rare date night for my mum and dad at a hotel, and they've got a wedding tomorrow. They're in Ripley. Good evening from there. Is that Zamani? Are you there? Stacey Ann Bender, hello. Good evening. And Joanne Lewis. Hiya, Joanne. Well, I think I've said hello to most of the people. Hiya, Nadia. Welcome to you. If I've not specifically mentioned your name, folks, not deliberate. Hiya, Mary. Good evening to you. It's just that we haven't got round to you, but do keep your comments in. As I say, do think about your questions. Hello there, Mr. Phil Shaw. Think about your questions for this evening. We might go off on a tangent and end up devoting some of the show and sort of spirituality to that. I say I'm going to start and talk a little bit more about training and follow some of that conversation about learning development. But I want to sort of do it from a point of view of where is spiritualism going? And I sort of caveat that with where is spiritualism going for me and, my church. Kelly said, please, can you send me some healing? Really struggling. Kelly, absolutely. Sending you some love, light, and some laughter, my friend, right now. And no doubt anyone else who's capable of sending that absent healing that's hearing this right now will continue to send it to your way, Kelly. That's on its way. Sorry you're having a bit of a struggle. Spiritualism. Where's it going for me? Where's it going for you? Where should it be going? Has it gone backwards? We think about the modern spiritualism and the Fox sisters and what they were able to achieve with some knockings, tappings, and rappings, and asking the intelligence behind the energy to communicate with them, to Victorian sort of times and mediumship, demonstrations of mediumship, some pretty incredible physical phenomenon, lots of physical mediums that then didn't have great health, struggled with their health after that sort of type of physical mediumship. And we think about the average sort of church service now. We've had an odd couple of years, and lots of us have gone online in search of answers and in search of perhaps answers to questions. Certainly lots of questions out there. We've seen lots of great demonstrations of mediumship. We've had thousands and thousands of you come and join us on Spiritual Psychic TV watching mediumship. And I think that actually, as a worldwide standard, we have some of the world's best demonstrators of what I call spiritual mediumship right here on this channel. And as you check out the different sort of variations, the standards is the really important thing there. The variations, the style in which people deliver their mediumship is obviously very personal to them, depending on their investment, their understanding of working with those gifts. But actually, the gift of mediumship available to all of us. Hi, Donna. And the opportunity to work with that gift of mediumship, to put your fingerprints on it, then that starts to become a bit of your skill and a bit of your talent. So everyone can work with the gifts and how you then work with it. And for me, as a spiritualist medium, when I'm working in that terms, I always say that, my job right now as a spiritualist medium is to give evidence of life after death. The experiment, what we're about to do, is to communicate with people who have gone through that change we call death, and is to show that they have a life after their life from the spirit world, from that place I call heaven. And once we've given that evidence and established who the communicator is, of course, we invite them forward to give us a bit of a message, often a little bit about what's going on now and a bit of sharing of memories. But what is it that keeps people coming back? Why do people tune in on a Saturday night and watch Spiritual Psychics TV? Not everyone there is hoping for a message. People are content in seeing evidence given to other people. I think when a medium works, it can be, doesn't necessarily mean it should be, but it can be very entertaining. And, as a practitioner, that means one thing. As a member of the congregation on SPTV on a Saturday night, or sat at the back at my own church in Wimbledon or Hatbridge, it's what keeps me coming back to the church. Well, I want it to be uplifting. I want it to be entertaining. but I don't want it to be entertainment. I can go to lots of different places for entertainment. Entertaining mediumship is, for me, another way of saying it should be engaging. I think that as we look back at some of the ambassadors in spiritualism, one of my favorite people to watch work was the lovely Doris Stokes. And my grandfather used to speak very highly of her. They were good friends. They formed Life After Death Promotions together. But he used to talk about the fact that she could have hundreds of people in the room, but she had the ability to make the person receiving the message feel like they were the only person there. And for everyone else, they were delighted to be part of that evidence, part of that experiment. And I think it's a really important thing, because we want virtual congregations to be full. We want churches and church centres to be full of people. And we need to make sure that the standards and the evidence of the mediumship is really important, and that actually there should be opportunities for people to practice the way they do in that. So much of our formal development as a medium is around the opportunity to work with that gift. So we've got the radio. We're given that. Perhaps we woke up since as soon as we were old enough to realize it was there, and we could hear or see or feel spirit. And then we start formally developing how to tune in that radio, how to find the favorites, how to home straight in on that frequency and start to give that evidence of life after death. But there is such a need for working mediums to get into churches and centres, and indeed online, that actually fledglings are having to work more and more often, and actually you don't often get to spend long as a fledgling before you are serving churches on your own. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because the way you get that experience is by going around those churches, going around those congregations, about getting outside of your comfort zone. I've often spoken about the fact that I was lucky and blessed in many ways to be brought up in spiritualism. But my comfort blanket, my umbilical cord, my spiritual umbilical cord, was that at the home at Wimbledon Spiritualist Church. I'd been up on platforms since I was a toddler, raising money for charity and putting the plate around. It felt like a very safe and confident space. But actually, one of the real tests for me in my mediumship was to get out of that comfort zone. I was giving, I think, satisfactory evidence of life after death. But it wasn't until a friend of mine, who you will see on SPTV in a training capacity, Mr. Paul Sassell, that challenged me quite gently to come out of London and do something different. He invited me down to his centre in Portsmouth. And, since then, for me, doing some of the things that I feel uncomfortable about have been some of the best challenges, including, working in social clubs and pubs, to working in theatres across the pond. So Stayshaw says it's interesting to see the various different ways mediums work with spirit, and how spirit adapt to work with the mediums as well. It's a diverse modality. Yeah, absolutely, Stace. That's a really good point. And for those of you that are new to the channel, do go back and check out Bill Hughes' show. And watch it. I think it's Thursday nights, isn't it, Richard? His Collective Consciousness. And what you've got a great medium there, Bill Hughes. And what he does is every week you've got a different medium working with him. And it's not two mediums just working with different guides and different communicators. What you do is you have this blend. You have this blend, this really interesting, exciting thing that happens where one communicator communicates to one member of the congregation through two mediums. So Stacey's point there about the different ways that mediums work and interpret. It's exactly the same if you talk about our physical senses. We will take the example of us all sat at home. I imagine at home. Some people, like my parents, in hotels. Maybe some of you are in cars or in car parks. And we're all watching this show right now. And, if it's 8:15 in the UK on the 25th of the 2nd, you're watching it live. Otherwise, you're watching it on playback other times across the pond and others. But actually, we're all seeing, hearing, feeling and engaging in different ways. Some of us will be watching this on TVs. Some of us will be watching this on screens, mobile devices, laptops, tablets, phones. And all of us will be giving it a certain amount of attention. Maybe some of you are washing up right now. or doing the hoovering and listening to this. Perhaps some of you have downloaded this and you're watching it, on the train or the tube to work. The fact is, we all give a conscious level of engagement to what it is we're doing with our own senses. And as a medium working with that sort of sixth sense, working with that mind's eye, it's fascinating to see just how the medium starts to pick up on similar things, often identical things, and certainly confirmation that it is the same communicator. Now, my dad's just piped in there. Mediums need to learn how to give a message and give evidence of continuing life. Yeah, it goes back to that principle of why we sit in circles and why we do that development. And it's, I think, about not becoming comfortable with that. It's also, so important to understand the congregation verification and the yeses, the no's. The no's from the congregation is just as important. My grandfather always used to say, treat that no as a challenge. And when they say no, you go back to the communicator and you ask them, why? Why have you given me something that has just said no? And actually, Gordon Higginson used to talk about, going and do as many private readings as you can. Just do them back to back, back to back, back to back. Work with lots of different people, lots of different communicators, because you need to practice and you need to get into a point where you're not comfortable, actually, where you're putting yourself out there to continue to develop. I've always vowed to try and take a daily spiritual advancement. And Rich and I were chatting offline just before we went live. And Rich and I were saying we've both got our opinions. We've both got opinions on a range of different things. We're both engaging, but we're also both willing to learn. And if someone's got evidence that they can talk to us about, they've got an opinion to share. And I think that in itself is really important, actually, because as we blend our training, our learning, our development, our understanding, one of the easiest things to do as a developing medium or as a member of the congregation that's aware of the gifts and aware of spirit around them is to become complacent with what it is you're getting, and then just sort of stop asking questions and stop challenging yourself to continue to do more. And I love giving messages of life after death. For me, it's the reason I serve churches, is to give people that hope, that comfort, that evidence that there is a life after life. And I think that feedback from congregations is that people like seeing that, either for themselves or from others. But for me, it's about getting more evidence the whole time. For those that have seen me work as a medium, I often do the letters, and I have my 7-year-old in the back of my head sounding out letters. Oh, I've got a snake here, and I've got a Fred. Those things are available to me in my palette of colors. So Spirit use them. They pick them out and go, yeah, that noise is correct. Use that one. But for me, it's about changing that. If I'm getting a letter and the letter is accurate, then I need the name. I want more details. I want the numbers. I want the definitions. I want the dates. I often get birthdays and anniversaries. And if you think about the way that you can give someone that sort of evidence, you could give them a season, couldn't you? I'm making this up, folks. I could say, Leslie Morton says you never stop learning. So I'm going to pick on you then, Leslie, for a minute. So Leslie, if I was giving you a message, one of the things I could say is, I've got someone here claiming to be, and I'm making this up, Leslie, this isn't mediumship, someone here claiming to be his second cousin twice removed, and they're saying to me that they passed, and that's when you can go, seasonal, in the winter, the autumn, the spring, the summer. And then, of course, within that, I've got another 4 months. I could go for a month. Now, it's not a game of guess who, is it? So I don't go for winter, which is a 1 in 4 likelihood, and you say yes, and I think, okay, I've now got a 1 in 4 guess of the month. It's not about guessing. It's about the evidence. Why is it I said winter? What is it the communicator has influenced? And if they can say winter, they can give me an influence about those months. So, for me, when I'm working, my birthday's in September. So if I get a glimpse of me celebrating my birthday, I often believe that Spirit is saying that there's an anniversary at the end of September. And that's the 29th of September, folks, in case any of you want to send me a card. That point in itself is then, will now give me a number. So don't just, because I'm terrible. Ask my wife, she remembers everyone's birthdays. I can't remember everyone's birthday. I knew my granddad had a birthday in August, and it was in the middle. So you could perhaps they'll influence me, and my granddad had come forward. I think, okay, they're showing me that. But equally, it's about understanding how my guides, how my communicator is going to work with me. Because is my granddad coming forward to show that the person that's communicating has a relationship with a dad's dad? Is it important that the reason my granddad has come forward is because their name also begins with D for Derek, or that they also had cancer, or is it that they grew up in South London? So all of these things come forward. It goes back to that point. You never stop learning. And therefore, you need to understand your relationship with your guides, with your teams, and with your communicator, because communicators come through on different types of understandings. Communicators come through with a different understanding, sometimes based on how long they've been in the spirit world, sometimes what they were indoctrined in. You know, what was their culture growing up? What was their faith? What was their religion? Because if they had an absolute my granddad's birthday was July. I got that wrong then, didn't I? Thanks, Dad. I told you I couldn't remember anyone's birthday. Although Stargazer says her daughter's birthday is the 20th of September. At least I remembered my own birthday, and Stargazer's daughter there, Jill. Thanks, Dad, for embarrassing me in front of YouTube and Facebook this evening. But it just goes to show, isn't it? So there I am in my conscious mind. I'm seeing my granddad. I'm thinking August, and actually my granddad's birthday was July. So you've got to understand those cues. You know, I often talk about spiritual catchphrase. And if we've got people who don't know what I'm talking about, catchphrase, Google it. It was a very popular game show growing up the 80s and 90s. I think they did a couple of remakes, but with catchphrase, you used to get bits of a picture, and the people playing the game had to reveal a square and think, oh, what is that a picture of? And for me, when I'm working as a medium, it's a bit like that. I think about the spiritual catchphrase and I'm thinking, what is it you're showing? What is it you're revealing? Because I would say that although I can physically see spirit, I can physically hear spirit, I can physically feel, I can physically smell spirit, I would say that 95% of the time when I'm attuned as a medium, or indeed even when I'm working now, that it's actually my mind's eye which is telling me about these things. And it's almost like an experience. So when I'm seeing my granddad, I'm not really seeing with my eyes, I'm seeing inside my mind's eye. And therefore, all of the work we do around the mind's eye, the mirror in your mind, the blank canvas, whatever you want to call it, it's about understanding what you're going to put on that canvas. And if it is a blank canvas, what is my palette of colors? And am I going to surrender myself partially or in full to the communicator or to my guides? And for me, you know, I'm still taking these steps. So I'm going to be 40 this year on the 29th of September. And I first started sat in circle when I was about 18. So I've had a few years of sitting in circles, three different circle leaders, plus I've been really blessed to have dozens of different mentors and people that I would have chose as a leader, even if they weren't my leader. Ultimately, if you choose to follow someone, you make them a leader. Now you have to bring all that together, and then you have to work out what's working well for you. But I'm trying to continue to learn, continue to develop, to better understand that relationship. When I attune and open up my mind's eye on a Friday night for this show, I'm not working directly with my mediumship team. I'm working with my spiritual philosophers, the people that sit round my executive committee, as I call them, my boardroom in heaven, with some friends and family, some loved ones, and some guides that sit around there. And one of my principal mediumship guides is a guy called Bear, or certainly a guy that claims to have been known by the name Bear. He works alongside my godfather, who was Bob Brunson, who I actually knew. Now, when they sit next to each other at the boardroom table in heaven, I imagine it in my head as they're sat there, and they're two totally different blokes. You know, Bear lived hundreds of years ago in America. He was someone that knew the British through some of the work that he did with them when they were growing what I believe was tobacco. From what he was sort of telling me, Bob Brunson lived in my lifetime. He was a carpenter. He was a healer. He was a medium. He was a boxer. Now, those two people couldn't be different. But when I'm working as a medium, they're working together. When I'm working with philosophy, they're sat down together and they're trying to come up with the same thoughts. They entered spirit at different times. They had different opinions when they went to spirit. Those that knew Bob Brunton would say that he felt he knew it all while he was alive. No doubt he's continued to be corrected while he's up there. But as all of these people come together, I have to challenge them too, because the spirit world doesn't automatically correct you. The evidence I give is the evidence of the personality of the person before they went through that transition that as you know, we call death. So they don't suddenly arrive in heaven with all the answers. They go there with their personality, with their knowledge, and it's over time, if they want to, that they can invest and develop. Now, Rose says that evidence convinces, converts. You don't have belief. You don't have to believe to receive a message or healing. Yeah, absolutely, Rose. Good point. So that mediumship team that all have these difference of opinions. Ralph Steadman, often referred to as someone I believe chairs that group for me. He wrote several books in spiritualist philosophy. And while he was alive, he would have told you that that was what he had come to believe as the truth. But when they all get together, they all have these little natters, and they influence me sometimes individually. But when they're doing it collectively, it is what they believe is the right answer. And the best way of describing this, if you can imagine 10 people sat around this table, 5 men, 5 women, they're all of different ages, different experiences, different human experiences and human cultures and human religions. And we pick a subject like, what is heaven? You get 10 different opinions. Now, because they're over in heaven, they can start to challenge each other. And what they have to do is they have to get rid of individual opinion and they have to look for fact. And of course, even in the spirit world, they have free will. But should they desire to seek the truths, to be involved in the halls of learning, perhaps visit places which you might have referred to, like the Acacia Records, then they have the opportunity to learn, to grow, to invest. And that's what I always encourage my committee to do, is to come and give me the answers so that I have a good chance in going forward. And everything I give you on this show is what I believe to be true from my own upbringing and culture, backed up by my guide team, my team of people that sit around and come up with these answers. And I ask for them to give me evidence about it. Now, Sally Ann says, your knowledge is phenomenal. I'm soaking you up. Oh, thank you, Sally Ann. That's lovely to hear. And I will openly share what I believe to be right. But I'm also keen for you, in the same way I said to Rich before we went live, challenge me. Challenge Ash. Challenge Ash with cash if it's in support of charity. Otherwise, challenge the status quo and ask Ash anything, because I'd really like to get some more of your questions, folks, and so they come in. So Sally Ann's got a question. Ashley, how do I connect with my spirit guides? I've spoken out loud to them, but unsure about how they respond. Ultimately, Sally, it's entirely up to you. It's like a signature, and you have to work out the way that you recognize your guides. But for me, it all starts with a proper sort of grounding and understanding of yourself. We have done a couple of shows about meeting your guides, which you can watch on playback. We did a lovely meditation, which was borrowed from the World Wide Web, and it was entitled about meeting your gatekeeper. And I believe that between this world and the spirit world, we all have some sort of gatekeeper. We all have at least one principal guide that's with us from the very start of our experience until the end. And then different guides come in and help us with different strands of our life. So in terms of connecting with them, it's finding out a little bit about what they do and what their jobs are. Now, I've been brought up spiritualist, and I've been aware of principal guide all my life, but I still don't really know how to connect with that guide. I know that they influence me and my intuition and my instinct and the gut of my stomach, the difference between right and wrong, but I don't have a human way of communicating with them. I don't have a human name for them or a description of them. I do with my mediumship guides. I'm aware of my healing guides. I'm aware of my philosophy committee. And all of that has come through meditation. It's where I'm able to clear my mind of all the clutter of the day and the shopping list and everything else. And I'm able to get to the point. I go to what I call the meeting circle. There's a waiting room from when I'm delivering mediumship, but for me, when I'm meeting my guides, I go to a meeting circle. It's a place I can go to at any time and recognize people, and it's about sitting there. Some people talk about sitting there in the power and allowing people to come forward. And actually, it was one of the most exciting things about sitting in a circle, Sally. So if you've never sat in a circle, do get in touch with your local spiritualist church or centre. You could go and use the Spiritual Psychic TV directory, give you a really good steer. In fact, you can even put on tonight where you're from, and people might even give you some suggestions on here. But yeah, check out the directory. Find a good church with an open circle or a circle that's recruiting, because some of the early things we did, people like Mary Dixie that are on the show a couple of weeks ago, that's on watching tonight, we would just sit there as a circle. We would follow a little guided meditation by Mary. Christine Woodham used to do this as well. And we would go and wander off. Sometimes we would stay as a circle group within our mind's eye. But it was all about meeting our guides. And we'd be asked questions afterwards. And that is one of the best things. So if you're sat in a circle, your circle guide and your other circle members could say, hey, Sally, what did you see? What did you hear? What did you feel? Did your guides give you anything? Did they give you a name? One of the things I love is almost being interrogated afterwards or during some sort of attunement. So everyone's at different sort of stages at development. I'm working as a spiritualist medium, but one of the things I'm fascinated with is that sense of control, that sense of trance. And the concept behind that is that when you are a medium and you're getting evidence via your communicators and your guide team, actually you can go a step closer where you're almost blending with the communicator. And then for other people, they get so deep into a meditative state that they're able to allow the communicator to come forward. You've got people like Polly on this channel that have given demonstrations of their trance. And for those of you joining us out Spiritual and Psychic Weekend, next weekend, you'll have opportunities to see some of that. But for me at the moment, as I'm inviting my guides to come forward, when I'm really well attuned to them and I've truly surrendered myself to their will, one of the things I love doing is I get someone like my mum or my dad to sit there and ask me questions. And of course, they're asking the guide the questions and I'm answering as Ash the medium, but they're ever so close to me that I'm answering for them. It's almost like that automatic answering, that automatic instinctive answer. And then, of course, for some of it, I'm able to then go off and research it and have a look up and see what it was all about. Like Bear, gave me evidence about being in Virginia, and he spoke about the tobacco, and he gave me dates. He spoke about when he died. He spoke about learning to read. And these are things I was able to go and research. And though I've not found, an actual character in history called Bear, all of the stuff adds up. And for the non-believer, they might say, oh, you could have seen that on the telly, or you could have got that and you could have conscious. Great. If you've got that sort of creativity, you're probably the people that are writing books and films. But all of it, really important, it blends together. So the lovely Deb Clark is watching tonight, spiritual medium, and she says a lot seem to need to know who their guides are. I don't know who mine are. I just know they're there, and that's enough for me. And before I even read your point, Deb, I said, you're a very good medium. You give wonderful evidence of life after life, and that's really important. And as I say, getting to know your guides for me is a great way of doing it. Certainly for the spiritual philosophy, I'm getting to know them individually and I'm learning their backgrounds, because for them, it's important that they give me evidence of the lives they had in their last experience here on Earth. And they talk about their credibility to be able to give philosophy. And, in fact, if people are interested, I might even do a show where we talk more about individual members of my spiritual philosophy committee, and I can give you little bits about their background and their so-called credentials. Now, Stacey Ann says, I showed my 3-year-old a picture of her great-grandmother who she'd never met, and we asked who it was, and she said, Granny. How would she know? Lovely, Stacey Ann, that you've been able to do that. I run what I call experiments with my kids. My grandfather, Derek, went back to heaven before my kids, his great-kids were born. But I threaded my granddad in to their life through history. I show them pictures and I thread them in. So one way they know him is that. But Ethan and Noah will often talk about knowing him before or meeting him. And I do have this belief that we all start in heaven, we go back to heaven, call it the spirit world. And there was this sort of, if you like, call it a pit stop, where my granddad went home to heaven and Ethan came down from heaven to have life in this experience. And I believe they met certainly in that layover, that pit stop, in the same way that Noah followed a few years later. And my grandmother Hazel never got to meet Noah physically. The fact that they talk about her in parts because I continue to talk about them and I thread them in. But the other thing is about them seeing them perhaps in heaven. Equally, when they're very young and they're working out what they're seeing with their physical senses versus their mind's eye, then there's this idea of people coming to see them. Now, Ethan, who's 7 now, probably when he was about 2 or 3, so a similar age, Stacey Ann, had an incredible understanding of life after death because of my nanny Hazel. So he was lucky enough to have known and to have been loved in the physical presence of my nanny Hazel. And when she died, he caught me crying one day. I think I was carrying him actually on my shoulders, and he asked me why I was crying. And I said I was thinking about nanny Hazel and I missed her. And he said, Why did you miss her? She's not gone anywhere. She's in heaven. You know where she is. And I was like, yeah, I do. And he says, and Dad, you know that heaven's a great place. Nanny's in a perfect place and she's happy there. So you shouldn't be sad. You should be happy that she's there. And I think for a 3-year-old to have that type of confidence about what the spirit world was, I mean, he certainly made me feel better. Bless him. I've had lots more challenging moments since then in the last few years, but I'm joking. He's wonderful. He just knew, and I believe that's because he'd just come from that place. He was still akin with that energy, and he was able to recognize her, showing herself, giving evidence of her life from heaven. As he's got older, sadly, as he starts to realize that not everyone can see and hear the same things he does, he sort of becomes less attuned, and it's natural. And I'm not going to encourage him to stay open. He needs to do that, as an older man. But you see his frustrations now that he can't see and talk to people in heaven like he used to. And just a couple of months ago, he was trying to say, we need to get higher, Dad. We need to get higher. Now, some of that was physical because he kept looking up. I believe that he was thinking about higher energy, higher frequency. So even at 7 years old, he's being influenced. My cousin Brett there, obviously knew Nanny Hazel very as well. Thanks, mate. Love you too. And Ethan was coming up with all these physical ways to get to heaven. Dad, we need a lift. We no, that's not going to work. It won't go up. We need an escalator. And then the funniest thing that he had said was a trampoline. He said, Dad, he said, you were really heavy. He said, if you get on the trampoline the same time as me and you do a really big bounce, I think you can get me high enough that I can see heaven. And we had some fun talking about that. And in part, he's making fun of me on my weight. But again, it was this idea that even at 7, he was aware that heaven was higher. Now, I think that physically, there's so much on the telly where you think about heaven as being above or with the angels in the clouds. So he's probably had some of that influence. But I do believe it was in part his understanding, some of that inherited experience. Now, Richard Taylor has just said, when connected with a spirit, have you had one push their way through? Thanks, Richard. Good question. So personally, no, I've never had someone push their way through. What I have done is I've had communicators push past each other. When I surrender myself to them for spirit to work with me, I do it under quite strict conditions. I'm not working publicly as a physical medium or anything like that. I do this in private circle. So I'm surrounded by really experienced people that therefore come with their experienced guide team. But in heaven, I have a security team. It's the equivalent of the special forces. They run all the physical security perimeter for me. There's towers. And in my mind, I've created this place, which I go to, the meeting circle, which is like base camp. There's a big fence. There's guard towers. There's CCTV. There's laser beam lights. There's perimeter sensors. There's a huge gate. and the gate is open most of the time. But on the gate, you've got special forces going around the corner and in the helicopters. On the gate is my doorkeeper. And my principal doorkeeper, my principal bouncer is Bob Brunton, who's my mediumship guide. So the idea that anyone sort of push past, they've got to get through Bob Brunton. They've got to get through my special forces and my security team to come anywhere near me. But of course, when I turn on all the lights, all of the floodlights go on, and it's not to keep people away. It's a light of attraction. And I'm like, hey, we're open for business. Base camp, open those doors, lower the fence, and we're encouraging people to come forward. And the closest experience I've had to what we'd say as a spirit sort of pushing through is, because of 99% of the way I work, it's demonstrating evidence or demonstrating and giving evidence of life after death of someone's loved ones. When I've gone to so-called haunted houses, when I've gone into people that have said there's a few things going bump in the night that I'm not happy about, you're going into a situation where actually the physical location may have spirits who aren't loved ones of people in the house, or indeed me. And that in itself is a little bit different. It's a very different experience. But again, I don't let them get anywhere near enough to push through me. I don't actually think that physical possession without consent is possible. So it's my own belief. I think that consent can be blurred if you under the influence of alcohol or drugs. So some so-called possessions or spirit pushing through could be because of either mental or physical incapacity, mental health, disability, alcohol, sort of drugs, domestic abuse, things like that. But actually, if you don't give consent, if you don't want it to happen, I think it's incredibly difficult for spirit to do any type of possession or push through. And you know, we could always talk about poltergeists and other things like that, but unhelpful energies or negative energies, they're around. But if you have the right security and protection in place and you don't want it, then you can push it away. I think that you can obviously turn on lights in the wrong connection, throw into the arena something like a Ouija board. That's like opening up your front door, turning on the lights, telling strangers that you're at home, and then not actually closing the door again, just waiting for people to walk in. And if you wouldn't let a stranger into your house, why would you let a stranger come into your spiritual mind's eye? So, you know, never leave the door open. Always leave someone on the door. At the very least, have a doorbell, have some locks, and only let people in once they're able to sort of give those credentials. So, Richard, yeah, I've never had anyone push their way through. I've seen all sorts of different experiences in houses where people have spoke about, you know, attempted possessions and things like that. And ultimately, it's down to me. To say who's going to come through. But if you watched the show a couple of weeks ago, Mary Dixie, my circle leader, was talking about situations where she felt that people were certainly trying to push through. Lovely Sam O'Neill. Good evening to you, Sam. Looking forward to seeing you work next weekend at our spiritual and psychic weekend down in Bournemouth. I think that we all definitely need the opportunity to get away with like-minded people. Martine. Good evening, Martine. Martine says, every medium is unique in his or her way and gifts. Have Claire's we feel loss. True. In 2019, lost myself in a tragic passing of my dear treasured young 4-year-old heart dog. Huge loss and grief after. Signs come from spirits of mediums or family. People almost did not bother or cared, and better, but was immense sudden loss. Young past. It depends. Message from spirit has free will too. Yes, Martine, and thank you for sharing what is quite a personal story. It's appreciated. Very different. It's that uniqueness again, isn't it? And the way that we all sense and interpret things. Thank you, Martine, for sharing that. Nancy says that she thinks this past year she's losing her faith. Need to know if my son is okay on the other side, life after life. Nancy, even though I'm not working as a medium right now, I have great confidence that he is okay and that he does have a life after life, because I have a belief in the afterlife. I think what you're saying is that you want confirmation, you know, from a medium, and you know, hopefully you will get that. What I can say is that finding his experience as a human being, as your son, cut short, he will be wanting to communicate with you to let you know that he is okay. But it's almost as if he's suddenly put into an alien world where he doesn't understand potentially how to use any of the communication devices. So he'll be looking for the opportunity, the can on the bit of the string, or the walkie-talkie, the smartphone, to communicate with you. And what he'll need you to do is to be in a position that you're ready to receive that communication. So if you imagine this spiritual walkie-talkie, Nancy, then the important thing to remember is that he'll get hold of a walkie-talkie at some point, and he will find a way to communicate with you. So what you need to do is to know that there is an afterlife and that he is there. He's in that place I call heaven. He'll be looking for the walkie-talkie. You have your walkie-talkie on, charged up, ready to go, and you telegraph the fact that you are ready to communicate with him. Now, communicate, unless you're working medium, Nancy, it won't necessarily happen in the same way of memories, but you could, for example, look to dedicate some type of service, some sort of unconditional act, unconditional love to him. And if you are able to ask him to be close to you at the beginning of the day, for example, and then dedicate that act of service to him during the day, at the end of the day, knowing that what you've done was unconditional, and hopefully love being universally incredibly powerful, him being close to you, you can then ask him to make you feel in a different way, to inspire you in some way, sort of shape or form. And I find that for people looking for that evidence, it can be as simple as that. And then just feeling different. You would have known, Nancy, what today feels like. Tomorrow, if you did this as an experiment, you could see if it feels any different, if the way you sleep felt any different, if while you were doing those things felt different. You can understand if the memories you have of them and their experience are changing, if they're any more vivid, because vivid images in my mind's eye, I know that's not a memory. I know that's spirit starting to put those images on the canvas. And it may be that you're never able to have the same sort of conversations with your son in heaven that you did before, but there is a way to communicate. There is a way for him to communicate with you. So look for those subtle changes, those vivid images. Encourage him to be close. Encourage him to give you a sign. Focus on that and look for the subtle changes. And Nancy, I hope that you don't lose your faith. Do reach out and talk to people. You've been very brave sharing tonight what you're going through. And with permission, I will send you some absent healing, spiritual healing thoughts too. Thank you, Nancy. Nice question. Brett says, Thomas is watching with me and says, hi. Hello, Thomas. Lovely to know we've got other generations of the family. Christine Woodham. You're right, Ashley. I did tell you all 2 weeks ago that I had someone actually jump into my body, a horrible feeling. Yes. So maybe it was Mary and Christine both mentioned that. And it can, yeah, quite possible. And that was with Christine as an experienced circle leader. So it in a way slightly contradicts what I said, which is I don't think it's possible. But of course, the definition of consent can change, because when we start working, we're like, hey, I'm ready to go. Who wants to communicate? Boom. A bit like that scene in the film Ghost of Patrick Swayze, when Whoopi Goldberg is possessed. Yeah, spirits work in mysterious ways. Thank you, Christine. Phil Shaw says, chance mediumship has certainly helped my understanding of spiritual philosophy and to release the conscious ego to spirit power and influence. Yes, indeed, Phil. One of the ways that we can surrender ourselves is to allow our bodies to be used by communicators. Phil works in trance states. And one of the things that we'll be doing as an experiment next weekend, folks, which will be broadcast live on Spiritual Psychic TV 2, is an element of transfiguration and mediumship. So I think it's next Saturday night. We've got an experimental seance as well, live from the Spiritual Psychic weekend in Bournemouth. So do check that out, folks, next Saturday evening. And we'll be inviting spirit to come close, to come forward. And often at these types of experimental seances, we'll be working in love and light. We'll be inviting our friends and family to come forward. But the other thing about that sort of possession was that you might come across this term, folks, called rescue mediumship or rescue circles, where you kind of take those slightly lost souls souls, or those people trapped in limbo between this and the next life, and you help them along their way. So lots of opportunities, lots of possibilities. And next weekend, for our guests in Bournemouth, they're going to have a whole range of different experiences, but exclusively for people watching Spiritual Psychic TV. A lot of the stuff will also be broadcast, and you'll be able to observe some of those things that are happening next weekend. Thanks, Phil. Good point. Oh, lovely. Just don't know. Sam O'Neill and Polly will be part of that experimental seance next Saturday. Maybe. Fingers crossed. But you'll certainly have lots of your favourite spiritual psychic TV presenters and hosts throughout the weekend. Some of your regular shows and some of your new ones. Joanne Lewis says, Ashley, don't you think developing mediumship is like learning to walk again if you haven't grown up with a spiritually aware family? Yeah, I think to a certain extent, Joanne, it is. And, you know, if you assume that you may have even done this in a previous incarnation or experience, it's about remembering to do those things again. And a lot of this will depend on your culture. I say I'm blessed in the fact that my entire life, I've always been told there's life after the change your body goes through called death. Had that ever since I was a kid. And because my parents were running churches, I used to go to churches. And when I was old enough, I used to sit in and watch the services. And I used to see all the different mediums. And I've probably been lucky enough to see thousands of different mediums over the years, thinking I was probably at church 3 or 4 times a week at 2 different churches. And you see all this different evidence. And for me, growing up, it was like, it was a fact. There is a life after death. In the same way that the sky was up and water was wet, I had that belief. And I think that if you're brought up differently, and you're brought up to say that there is no life after death, then you become a creature of habit, become a product of that culture. And therefore, when you find your sort of spirituality, you start working again within this. Yeah, it's like learning to walk again, and you have to convince yourself through training and discipline and practice that some of the things you were told weren't right are actually quite right. Equally, you might have been told it was wrong. My family, through my wife's family, I've got a lot of Irish links in Catholicism, and I've had some brilliant conversations with my nan-in-law, and she's always believed in a life after death. As a Christian, as a Catholic, heaven is a place that you go to. If you earn that position to be there. She was never told that you can't talk to people in heaven. In fact, priests and different sort of official figures within Catholicism do that all the time, and some of the saints have earned that, and holy places like Lourdes, effectively founded by Catholics, talking to ancestors in the spirit world. But what Mary was told ever since she was a little girl is, you shouldn't do it. This is wrong. Perhaps you're disturbing the dead by doing it. And I think that in itself can then influence, obviously, the way you've grown up. So take one step at a time. I think Joanne's absolutely right. 1 foot forward, and then just keep doing it, keep repeating it. Sam O'Neill, I have absolutely trust in spirit, and my belief is 100% a nest in trance is showing spirit. I'm giving all of me to help. Yeah, lovely point, Sam O'Neill. Thank you for that. Okay, great. I think that Sam is saying that she will be there at the experimental seance next Saturday. And what we'll have for you folks is lots of different spiritual and psychic tools that you'll be able to see. So if you're at the weekend, you're going to get to participate in this if you want to. And if you're watching from home, you'll get to see bits of this. We'll have some infrared cameras. We'll have a Ouija board in the right circumstances. We'll have one of the Frank's box, the spirit boxes working, perhaps one of the planches with a pens. Sally Ann says, Ashley, do you agree with the opinion of that we choose our family before we come to Earth? Sally Ann, I think it's possible. Some, or of course, if you believe that, which I do, you can have the other way, which is you had no choice because someone chose you. Is it a mutual aid? And people talk about soul contracts. People talk about soul groups. So yeah, I am a believer of reincarnation. We've dedicated a few shows to the concept of reincarnation, the concept of karma. We've done a couple of shows where we spoke about destiny with the lovely Kate May, astrologer and tarot card reader, that gave a really nice explanation of destiny in comparison, or the context of free will. So there is a destiny, there is a headline and big picture finish line that you're heading towards, but you've got free will to muck it up, or other people's free will to muck it up on the way. But ultimately, Kate May gave the opinion that you're going to end up where you're meant to be, that there's destiny, and the choices you've made before coming down to Earth, in line with the planets and everything else, actually makes perfect sense. I'm still formulating a full opinion on this, but I think that when we finished in this life, so when our body is now a corpse, we finished with the vessel, we go back to that place I call heaven in the spirit world, and the evidence that you give to a medium is you give evidence of the personality you had in that last experience. Very rarely, certainly not in spiritualist churches and centres, will you have a medium say, well, I've got someone here who's claiming actually to be your second cousin twice removed, and they're also in ancient Egypt, selling fish. You very rarely ever get that sort of past life come in, which makes me beg the question of how important is past life and future life on this life. And I've sort of come to the conclusion that the fact that our memory is eradicated for the physical 3D experience and the incarnation in this life, actually our past lives are almost irrelevant to the life that we're living right now. Otherwise, we'd have more of a knowledge on it. And of course, you can get some of that knowledge through past life regression and deep meditation and things like that. But ultimately, the way you live your life now, with the people you live your life with now, that experience is what's important. And I think to a certain extent, you have the opportunity to choose when you enter, where you enter that incarnation. And for some of our older viewers, you remember Blockbuster Video. I think I think Richard's laughing. I remember Good Friday nights for Blockbuster. No, I was going to say, but no, I think Somewhere in Heaven is like the equivalent of Blockbuster, and you go in and you sort of have this opportunity. Right, I'm going to be a new human being. What looks good today? And just imagine, Sally Ann, then if you were doing this for the first time, you wouldn't necessarily have a family to reincarnate with, but you might have a group of beings within the spirit world. You say, should we do it all together? Should we go down there and experience it together? And you all go into Blockbuster Video and you go, well, I'm going to be the mum, I'm going to be the dad, I'm going to be the brother, sister, second cousin twice removed, I'm going to be the miserable next door neighbor. And everyone chooses kind of like a role, a character within that portrayal. Destiny, this one looks like good. Everyone lives a long, healthy, happy life as millionaires in a lovely house. We're going to get to have lots of wonderful experiences. Let's go and do it. Boom. You all incarnate. You all go through those experiences. And then you come back and you kind of have a chat about, well, wasn't that really good? Should we do it again? We had so much fun. And then actually you might say, well, this time I'll do it again, but I want to be a man instead of a woman. I want to be older than you. You were my mum. Now I want to be your mum. And you could play back some of those roles. And you could do this dozens, if not hundreds of times before you come to the conclusion that you're starting to perhaps accumulate a little bit of karmatic debt, or karma, negative karma. Because if you're looking to progress again within the spirit world, there's this element of choosing your family and what sort of life and experience did you have. So I'm not going to go too much deeper into that, but just think about Blockbuster Video. Think about the opportunity to go through some of those characters and those roles, to be there and to do it with each other. Sometimes for the fun and the experience of it. Sometimes because you're perhaps now working off a bit of that karmatic debt. Perhaps you're doing it as a favor. Perhaps you did something in your life that you're not happy with and you want to make it right. A bit like Dr. Sam Beckett in Quantum Leap. You're going to go back and change it, and you get really, Richard says there's a new Quantum Leap coming out. That'd be good. Give me a new influence for my heaven waiting room. So yeah, lots of opportunities there. And I understand, and you just came in with another comment there. There are many, many different types of holy books back in the day, but unfortunately the Vatican that chose to remove and hide them. One was on spiritualism. A psychic medium told me this. Yeah, absolutely, Sally Ann. There's a lot locked up in the Vatican vault. I'm absolutely certain of that. And of course, the Bible, which is a pretty famous religious book, covered in all sorts of great stories, weird stories, wonderful stories. But we did a show where we talk about in the Bible, it talks about mediumship, talks about healing, talks about the spiritual gifts. There are bits of the Bible, if you take out the context of the bits which say Jesus wasn't a human being, he was an incredible godlike creature. But if you look at the bits which talks about Jesus the human being, Jesus the teenager, Jesus the teacher, Jesus the leader, you've got sort of just a bloke, not just a bloke, he was an incredible bloke, wasn't he, Jesus? But you've got a bloke called Jesus that's telling us all about God, not as his dad, but as everyone's dad. God as the creator of everything, and all these wonderful spiritual gifts that we can all work with. So yeah, lots of religious books have different references to it. I've only started to do research initially within Christianity, Christian books and the Bible. I've started to look into the Quran and also seek religious prayers. Also, if you think about the ancient alien sort of theories, there's all sorts of stuff that go back again about stuff that wasn't included in Christianity. The Book of Enoch, for example, which has some contradictory stuff. So yeah, lots of really, really interesting things. Remember that, of course, history is ultimately written by the victors, by the people that decide what it is they want us to record and what they want us to remember. So all of that is quite important in remembering what we're going to do with this stuff. Hopefully that answers that question. And of course, continue to look for other books. The Church of England have just published it unofficially, Research into Spiritualism. Research into Spiritualism, where ultimately they found out it's not as incompatible as you might think. The Reverend Val Owen, I think, was either Church of England or Catholic priest who was set off to kind of disprove or prove spiritualism, came back and sort of said, actually, this could be the next step for the church. They've got something, these spiritualists. Reverend Val Owen ended up coming into spiritualism himself, ended up getting involved with people like Richard Arthur Bush, who founded the mission down in Wimbledon over 100 years ago. So yeah, some really good stuff out there. Continue to have a look at it. There's some really interesting published documents as well about Helen Duncan, the famous physical medium from World War II. Wendy Gawley says, I've never heard hell mentioned in spiritualism. Is this a Christian concept, Ashley? Thank you. I'll answer that question, Wendy. And Richard, I think you might have flashed up another question that I mentioned. It was Phil. Was it Phil? Okay. Good stuff, Phil. Thanks for that. So, Wendy, I think that the concept of heaven and hell is a human-made thing, and that I'm comfortable with the label heaven. That's what I like calling the spirit world. I think it sounds nice. I could be totally wrong, but for me, I've heard the word heaven ever since I was a youngster. I quite like it. I call it heaven. For me, it's the spirit world, it's the afterlife, and there's only one afterlife. In the same way I spoke about my son thinking upwards, heavens upwards, higher frequency, higher variety, I do think there's the possibility of the reason we think about heaven as down is because of a lower frequency. So I'm not an expert on dimensions and portals and other bits and pieces, but we often talk about the now, the human experience as being in 3D. And I always think about wearing the red and green glasses when I talk about 3D. But for me, the third dimension, the 3D experience of being a human being, suggests that there is a dimension below that, 2 dimensions below that. And when I've asked questions to my guides about it, they sort of say, there's not much there, darkness, negativity, pretty rubbish. What's in the next dimension? If you talk about vibration and energy, because that's ultimately my understanding of it, 3D experience, human being, energy, vibrating like that, higher frequency, higher energy, faster energy, lower standard. So you could say that hell is a lower dimension, a lower vibration, more negativity, more darkness. 4th dimension, higher frequency, higher energy, more love. Some people talk about the 4th dimension as being a transition or a portal to that place we call heaven. Depending on who you talk to within spiritualism, you talk about people saying, oh, actually, heaven is the 5th dimension. You transition through limbo, which is the 4th dimension. And people that live in heaven in the 5th dimension come into the 4th dimension because it's where the 2 vows meet and they can communicate in the 3D world. So there's lots of interesting theories on this. I don't think we have to understand all of it. I think that the reason that the average sort of person talks about heaven being up and hell being down is probably because of that. And I think that in the same way there are horrible people that live amongst us in the 3D world, when those people die, they don't instantly get converted into angels and become wonderful people. If they were really horrible, really evil people, then when they die, they will have a life after the life they've just had, but they probably end up in some sort of prison, probably of their own making. And you could argue that because of the type of person they were, that is much lower frequency. Now, I don't think that necessarily means that they cannot progress and they're not able to incarnate and start again, because we spoke about destiny, we spoke about the concept of karma, and actually, if you're a pretty nasty, evil person, it might only be after that experience as a nasty, evil person that you're able to look at your wrongdoings and the detriments of your character, and you have the opportunity to go back to Blockbuster Video, choose a new life where you work off some of that karma. Equally, you could just be stuck in that stickiness of darkness, that you just feel attracted to that darkness, and because of your beliefs and your culture and the way you lived your life, you're unable to progress. And I think that when we talk about rescue work, rescue circles, when we talk about some of those more negative energies, people preying on those with psychological or mental health issues and solvent abuse and domestic abuse, drugs, that alcohol, that sort of stuff, then those people that have a life after that life experience are existing, and perhaps they're in that sort of place they call hell. I mentioned that film Ghost again. I like the way that Ghost and Hollywood portrayed that, the darkness and the shadows. The shadows. Yeah, I've got Richard Seen in my ear. I was voice of an angel, a hell's angel. It's beautiful. um, yeah, I remember now. Now you've got vision of the clay pot, when they were molding the pot in the Ghost film. Oh, right. So Richard with his top off could be a Patrick Swayze lookalike, folks. So watch out for another show and the links to that. But yeah, I liked Ghost and the way they portrayed it, the darkness and the shadows, kind of taking care of the shadows. What I do know is that nasty, evil, negative energy, darkness, is unable to continue to progress. You know, in the same way that I speak about my guide team being the equivalent of my castle, my special forces, darkness and negative energy cannot continue to evolve. It needs to get rid of that darkness and energy. That is my belief. So you could argue that's the hell, Wendy. Crikey, we're running out of time. We're coming towards the end of the show. So last couple of questions, folks. I do love your questions. That's where I sort of have less chance to think about what I'm saying. My team. Lindsay Wood, do spirits hear us talking? Yes, Lindsay, I believe they do. They don't have a physical body with physical ears for hearing, as opposed to hears. That was a hybrid word there, Lindsay. But yes, they do hear us talking. Talking is energy. Thinking is energy. Everything we do is energy. And heaven is a place of pure energy. It's a place of pure thought. So they're able to hear us talking, but not necessarily with a physical pair of ears. And I know that because when I've given evidence of someone's life after life, they tell us about the things they heard us say or the things they saw us doing, even though they have no physical body to have used those senses. Thanks, Lindsay. Okay, folks, we have come towards the end of the show. So I just want to tell you a little bit about tomorrow night from 8 o'clock. We have a demonstration of mediumship live stream on YouTube and Facebook Live. And on Sunday morning, join the divine service with Women and Spiritualist Church, broadcast live from the church with a live congregation from 11 a.m. I think it might actually be Phil Shaw this weekend. Mary Dixie in the chest. So two of the congregation hosting that show in the morning on Sunday at 11 o'clock. And of course, next week, live from Bournemouth, the Women of Spiritualist Church Divine Service Roadshow with Marcus Lupser. Yeah. The lovely Polly Harnett trance demonstration, Sunday, March the 13th from 7:30 p.m. And as I say, folks, for those of you lucky enough to be with us in Bournemouth next weekend, there will be a trance demonstration by Polly there too. And I think we'll be broadcasting elements of that. But you can see the lovely Pani Hollier as well as the lovely Bill Hughes. My friends Matt and Kirsty Grogan on June the 11th at the Spiritual Psychic TV show down in Portsmouth. There's free parking, folks. The doors open from 6:30, and why not make a day out of it? That's what I'm planning to do. Take the Wimbledon Brigade up. We're going to be there. I'm going to be doing some spiritual counselling during the day, but there's going to be all sorts of mind, body, spirit shops and stalls. A wonderful opportunity to come and be amongst like-minded people. Tomorrow afternoon, folks. Oh, Richard will be on location. The Handball, Mind, Body and Spirit Fair. Whereabouts is that, Richard? In Handball near Southampton. So it'll be live on location, and Polly will be accompanied by Polly and Sam. Wonderful. Do check that out, folks. We've come towards the end of the announcements. If you've never headed over to Spiritual Psychic TV website, do it, folks. There is so much incredible content on there, from the training academy to the player to watch playbacks of the show. There's a brilliant events section. You can see about people doing live demos in person close to you. You can see about people doing stuff online. You can look up your directory, find your local mediums, your local churches and your centers. And one of the really special things is the awards section. So Spiritual Psychic TV are hosting a lovely awards section where we're looking to give recognition for people that have given service across this channel. You can vote there, folks. It's absolutely free. By doing so, you can enter yourself into a prize draw. You can vote for your favorite hosts, your favorite mediums, your new and up and coming mediums. Lots of great categories there. You could also nominate. I don't think it's too late. You can still nominate your favorite medium, folks, if you don't see them in that list. But head over to spiritualpsychictv.online, look for the event section, register for free as a voter. If you've enjoyed this show, you might want to give me a little vote. If you've enjoyed one of our mediums doing one of the shows, give them your support, show your love by voting for them. Terry Wall, you have the final words of the evening. Have a great weekend, everybody. I've got very excited, almost 9-year-old. We'll be creating lots of memories this weekend. Hope everyone has a lovely weekend too. What a nice note to finish. Happy birthday to Sophie. Best wishes to you all. Folks, look after each other. Whatever you're doing this weekend, I hope it's something that you're doing with people you love, and I hope it's something that you love doing. Get out there, make those memories, enjoy the experience. Good night and God bless. Thank you.